A war hero stood trembling on the manicured grass of Pine Ridge, his service dog at his side, as a club manager coldly told him to leave because pets weren't allowed. Phones filmed. No one intervened. His voice didn't rise, but his silence shook the room. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The footage spread like wildfire. By evening, Tom's confrontation had racked up hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok and X. Clips of Langley's dismissive tone, juxtaposed with Tom's quiet dignity, struck a nerve. "Then maybe Pine Ridge isn't your place anymore," was replayed over and over, each time with growing outrage. Veterans groups reposted it with hashtags like #BanTheBan and #ServiceDogNotPet. Even civilians who had never stepped foot on a golf course flooded the comment sections with disbelief and fury. But online anger didn't soften what came next. Tom didn't sleep that night. Shadow curled up on the floor beside his bed, sensing the tremors in his chest long before the nightmares could reach him. Not of war, but of rejection, of standing there, humiliated, while the club he'd found a fragile peace in turned its back. He hadn't joined Pine Ridge for prestige. He'd joined because the course was quiet, predictable. Clean fairways, gentle greens, no hidden threats, no screaming, no bombs. Just the swing of a club and the rhythm of breathing. The ritual had steadied him. Now it was gone. The next morning, Tom's phone buzzed with messages from local news outlets. Some offered interviews, others just wanted a quote. One even asked if he could recreate the moment for better footage. He ignored them all. His daughter Emily came over that afternoon. She was livid. "They banned you? Are you kidding me? This is discrimination." He tried to brush her off, muttering, "It's their club. Let it go." But his voice broke at the end. He wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. Emily didn't let it go. She posted a full-length video of Tom, sitting on the back porch, Shadow's head resting on his knee. In it, Tom didn't rant or rage. He just talked. About the IED, about losing Corporal Jensen and Sergeant Hale, about how Shadow had laid across his chest during his first panic attack, and how, for the first time in years, he'd felt like he might survive the silence. "I don't need sympathy," he said, staring into the camera. "But don't call him a pet, not when he's the reason I'm still here." That was the moment the story turned. By nightfall, the video had passed 1 million views. Veterans associations released official statements condemning the ban. A former Pine Ridge member offered to cancel his membership in solidarity. A local news anchor choked up on air reading Tom's words. Strangers began sending letters, some handwritten, from across the country. But none of it changed the fact that Pine Ridge had sent a message loud and clear. Tom didn't belong. That truth festered in his gut. The course had been his sanctuary, the fairways, his peace. And with a single clipped sentence, a man in a blazer had stripped that away, not because of a rule, but because of a prejudice dressed up in policy. Shadow licked his hand that night, sensing the storm building behind his ribs. Tom looked down at him. "Maybe they think they can shut the door," he murmured, "but they forgot something." He didn't finish the sentence, but the way his jaw clenched said everything. Tom hadn't meant to start anything, but when he read Katie's article, really read it, not just skimmed it for errors or gotcha quotes, something inside him shifted. It wasn't just the words, it was how she told it. She didn't frame him as a victim. She didn't beg for pity. She painted a portrait of a man quietly holding his brokenness together, and a dog who wasn't just loyal, but essential. Her words had weight, not sympathy. And her closing line, "What if the next tournament at Pine Ridge wasn't for trophies, but for wounded warriors?" hit like a dropped match in a dry field. The next morning, Tom opened his inbox to a flood of messages. Veterans, yes, but also teenagers who'd lost military parents, middle-aged golfers who'd faced PTSD in silence, even an old lieutenant who hadn't spoken to him in years. One email simply said, "Thank you for speaking when the rest of us couldn't." Shadow could sense the change, the way Tom's posture straightened a little, the way he stared out the window longer, not with dread, but contemplation. At Willow Creek Greens, a public course 20 miles down the road, head pro Marcus Delgado, himself a Navy veteran, posted a video in response to the controversy. He stood on the 18th green, holding a flagpole tight in the morning wind. "Tom Granger, if you're watching this, we've got a tee time waiting for you. And not just you. Any vet who's ever been told they don't belong. Our fairways are open." The video drew millions of views within days. By Friday, the term Warrior Open was trending in 6 states. Someone designed a logo, a silhouette of a golfer standing beside a dog, both staring down the fairway. Dozens of wounded veterans posted videos swinging clubs, introducing their service dogs by name. For once, the comment sections weren't filled with political sniping or cynical jokes. They were filled with stories. A double amputee Marine from Michigan wrote, "I used to hide my prosthetics at the driving range. Not anymore." A widow in North Carolina shared a picture of her late husband with his service dog, captioned, "They didn't let him play in life. Let's make sure others can." Callaway offered free clubs to the first 100 veteran signups. Titleist sent over custom balls stamped with the words, "For those who served." Even PGA veterans like Darren Mullen posted about it, saying, "This is more than golf. This is justice with a backswing." Tom watched it all unfold in stunned silence. He hadn't picked this fight, but something about the way it was growing, honest, raw, earned, stirred something dormant in him. Not pride, not yet, but maybe belief. That people still cared, that silence could become something more. On his kitchen table, next to Shadow's worn leash, was a printed copy of Katie's article. The pages were creased and coffee-stained now, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. He picked it up, reread the last line again, and whispered to no one, "Maybe it is time." Shadow raised his head at the sound of his voice, and for the first time in a long while, Tom didn't feel like just a man trying to survive the day. He felt like part of something again. The air at Willow Creek that morning was different, not just crisp with dew, but electric, humming with anticipation. Rows of folding chairs lined the fairways, but most of the crowd stood. They weren't there to spectate. They were there to witness. The first Warrior Open was more than a tournament. It was a declaration. There were no speeches from celebrities, no corporate grandstanding, just the sound of bagpipes echoing across the course as the sun rose, casting long shadows behind rows of veterans lined up in formation, not for war, but for golf. Tom Granger walked to the first tee like he was approaching a battlefield, not out of fear, but reverence. Shadow stayed close, his dark coat catching the morning light. They moved as one, man and dog, like they always had since that brutal morning outside Fallujah. But this time, Tom wasn't walking into gunfire. He was walking into healing. He looked out over the field of players, a double amputee adjusting his grip, a young woman in a modified wheelchair with an American flag painted on the backrest, an older man in a Vietnam vet cap clutching a photo of a fallen comrade. The silence was not solemn. It was sacred. Tom cleared his throat, his hand shaking slightly as he lifted the mic. "I didn't expect any of this," he began, his voice gravel in honesty. "When I was turned away at Pine Ridge, I felt small again, like I didn't belong in the country I gave everything to. But then this happened. You happened." He paused, scanning the crowd, not for applause, but for connection. "I'm not here because I hit a good drive. I'm here because you all turned humiliation into honor. We didn't come here to make a point. We came here to take our space back." Applause didn't erupt. It built, slowly rising from the veterans first, then the families, then everyone else, until the entire course thundered with hands and cheers and tears. Tom stepped up to the tee. He squared his stance. Shadow sat beside him like a sentinel. The swing was effortless, smooth, controlled. The ball sailed high and clean, cutting across the morning sky, a perfect arc that seemed to defy gravity. He didn't fist pump. He didn't smile. He just nodded, as if to say, "This is what it should have always been." As the tournament unfolded, stories bloomed across the fairways. A PTSD survivor from Texas hit his first drive in 10 years. A group of Gold Star families started a scholarship fund by the ninth hole. A blind vet with a swing coach stunned the gallery with a near hole-in-one. This wasn't a game. It was redemption in motion. News outlets showed up in force, but they didn't ask the usual questions. Instead, they listened, captured, shared. And by nightfall, footage of Tom's opening drive was playing on every major network. Meanwhile, at Pine Ridge, silence reigned. The clubhouse, once pristine, stood hollow. Empty parking spots, letters taped to the doors, the ghosts of its former pride trailing like shadows. Their apology came late and hollow, but none of it mattered anymore, because on this day, on this course, something new had been built. Grassroots, grounded, unstoppable. Tom stood under the fading sun as the last players rolled in. Shadow lay at his feet, finally at peace. "This was never about revenge," Tom said quietly to Katie, who had flown in to cover the event. "It was about belonging, and today, I think we all found our place." For the first time in years, he felt whole. Not because he'd been accepted back into something, but because he'd helped create something better. The kind of justice that doesn't wait to be granted. The kind you drive straight down the fairway, with your head high and your shadow close.